Hey guys, what is going on? It's Fen here again. So in today's episode we're going to be talking about UVing inside of UV layout, and the reason I wanted to do this tutorial is because I'm going to be making a tutorial about texturing and lighting. And Cinema 4D has terrible UVing tools. I've said in the past, it just requires one feature to make it really usable, and that is a quick weld method, and it doesn't offer that. So when you're trying to construct your hard surfaces back together, it's just impossible to do that. So, you know, that's why I use a third-party program called UV Layout. So today I'm going to be unwrapping this blade holder, a very simple object. I'm going to drag it and drop it in. I'm going to load it up, default settings. And this object is a very complex object in terms of how it was built. It's all quads, everything looks fantastic, but it still needs, you know, UVing, because this is going to be like a main part, so it definitely needs good UVs because the detail needs to be put on here. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to display, and I'm going to split the panels. I'm going to change this one to UVs, and I'm going to leave this one as the edit view. Now, one of the things that was added in the version 2 was called segment, and segment will allow you to basically UV hard surfaces. If you've watched one of my other previous tutorials on UVing a pillow, it didn't have any options to kind of, you know, UV hard surfaces, but now they've added in segment, which is really fantastic. So I'll go through the settings and just kind of tell you what they do, and then we'll just show you an example. The box here will let's say you've got an object here and it's made up of multiple objects. If you use box, it will keep them specific objects you use and keep them in its own little texture area, so you can move all of them around individually instead of, you know, going through, selecting them, using the spacebar, moving them. If you do need to know any hotkeys for this application, you can just go up to About, and it will be under hotkeys. You can find them, very simple. The weld here, you've got off, radial, and all. This kind of self-explanatory. You use R, radial, for radial objects or cylinders, stuff like that. All, if you want it to weld everything together that it can in the threshold. Now this is a degrees. The higher you go, the threshold is explained like this. This is a 90-degree angle. It goes up and then a sharp turn to the right, and that is a 90-degree angle. A 60-degree angle would be kind of across and then down again. So depending on the angle, the degrees, it will weld specific objects, such as these in here. Because these are at certain degrees, if that's below the threshold, it won't actually weld them together. It'll keep them as separate polygons or poly UVs. The weld gap allows you to weld a percentage of gap. So if this wasn't connected, this loop, we could use that and it would weld them together for us instead of going through and manually doing it. And then you've got fast weld, which I'll talk about soon, because that is the feature that is kick-ass basically. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press G on my keyboard, G for George, and it's going to give me some options at the bottom here. So make sure you read these. The one we're going to be using is left mouse button and right mouse button. Left is to select, and G and then right click is to deselect. We're going to be pressing G and selecting all of these, and then I'm going to show you kind of what this looks like. So I'm going to use weld off. I'm turning box off as well, and I'm just going to use segment marked polys. So it's going to go through, it's going to segment them bitches up, and as you can see here, this is what we're left with. Now, because of these objects in here, if we go into the 3D view, in not that one, in this window, you can see that these points in here are actually, some are connected, then it stops, and then some are connected and then it stops, and that's because of the degrees here. It's only set to 60, so this here is a 60-degree angle, and then this one round here is also a 60-degree, and then this one is a 60-degree. So because of that, using the weld off is particularly good, because it just means you need to do more welding. So I'm going to Control Z that to undo that, and I'm going to use the R for radial, and we're going to use that. And this one I think personally gives the best results, because it makes all of the ones that think should be connected. So all the polygons around this cylinder here are connected, which is great. If we do Control Z and do all, this will give you a really good result. So if you really want a fast UV, this will work fantastic. It's going to give you these connected, it's going to give these connected as well. And if we press T, and you can see this is what we get, and it looks pretty good. Now the only problem with this is just how the UVs are set out. So for example, if this is the front of the thing, and we're always going to see this, we've got a lot of segments or seams around here. So this would be a seam, everything that's green is a seam basically. So you would see these, but because it's on a hard surface, it's not that big of a deal, because the only way you would really see this is if you would put in scratches on the corners, and if they're not lined up in UVs, then it's almost impossible to actually line them up as you're going over them, because it doesn't matter if it's a seam or not. If the colour basically blends in, you will never see the seam. It's because the reason people get seams is because when they are painting, let's say, blue here and red here, the contrast between them two is so great that you can see the seam. However, if it was a gradual fade between both of them and the colour on the seam was matching throughout, you would never see the seam. And that's why it's important to have your UVs laid out very close together, almost connected in fact, that you don't see the seam, and that's the important part. So on here, these aren't giving me seams where I want them, so that's why I don't really like to use that method. The one I like to use is the radial. I just think it gives the best, the best look, and it allows me to connect them myself. So as you can see down here, we have all our objects, which is absolutely fine. We have our UVs here. Now some of these aren't particularly great, so what we're going to do is we're going to start changing them. So we're going to take this one here where the numbers are pointing up, so they're readable basically from left to right, which is this one here. So that's fine. So we're going to move that, hold it in space and middle mouse button, moving that to the side, that's fine. Now we want this one here, which could be this one, which is not, it's this one. So we want to rotate this around so it's facing the right direction. So we're going to go up here to move scale and rotation, and we're going to rotate this, I'd say about 45 degrees. So that's upside down, so we're going to do it a few more times. And as you can see now that the numbers are basically readable, so that's fine. So we're going to move that one just up here. And then what we want to do is we want to connect this big long side, which could be this one, which it is, to this one. Now how do we connect it? Well, it's actually very simple and very, very awesome. So what you do is you zoom right into the edge of this. Now depending on how close your control edges are to your final edge, if you like, where the seams are, it will be difficult to select from a distance, and so make sure you zoom in, because it can be a little bit awkward sometimes. So hover your mouse over and press W, it will highlight red. So what you need to do now is go down to fast weld and turn it on. And then what you need to do, see down here we get some options. We're going to left click on this edge, and it's going to give us a basically highlighted edge. It's going to show us this object down here is going to be moved up here, and it's going to be connected at this one point. Okay, cool. So how do we confirm that? Well, weld shells, enter. So we're going to press enter, and it's going to weld that point together. Now one thing it doesn't do is, depending on if you select all the edges or not, it's going to leave a seam. So all you need to do is hover over that and press W. Now you may need to press it once or twice for it to fully weld all of the seams, which is nice. And as you can see, just make sure you check down the bottom that there's no seams, and you'll be great. So what we can do is we can go to the opposite side, and we can go over it, press W, left click, enter, and then W to seam all that, or to weld it all up. And as you can see, in a matter of seconds, we've welded this edge to all the others, which is, really, really cool. So what we can do is zoom in on this one, W, left click, enter, hover over a green edge and press W. So looking at that, it looks pretty damn good. And I'm just zooming at the bottom, everything is connected, perfect. So what we can do now is we can go to the top here, and we can basically look at this, press W, left click, enter W, and weld that up. Now as you can see over here, we do have a little green blodge, which basically means this isn't connected. So just hover over it and press W and it will be connected. Now you can use F on this and it will just loosen it up a little bit. Do not use Shift F, which is kind of an advanced relax. The reason you don't use that is because it will just completely screw up the mesh. Because this is so complex, it won't know how to unfold it again. So definitely don't use that. You can use just F and that will kind of flatten out some tension. And you can see the tension in the corners if there is any. Right now there isn't, so that's good. And again, we're going to go up to the top. I'm going to hover over, press W, left click, enter, and then find a green edge and press W. And just check these corners that they're welded together. And that one seems to be welded, and that one seems to be welded. So quite quickly, we've actually unwrapped that really well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off fast weld, click on this, and I want to rotate it around. I'm going to move this one over, and I'm going to zoom underneath and click this one. If you want to deselect it, just click anywhere in the grey area and it'll deselect it. Again, rotate this one around like so. And then what we can do on this, I'll show you multi-welding. So I'm going to turn welding back on. I'm going to go to one of the corners, top corner, so I can choose the top corner here and the side corner. Now again, like I said before, sometimes it's a little bit finicky to actually select these. Even though you think your cursor's on it, sometimes it's not, so you may have to zoom in or out depending. Just kind of try different areas and you will get it eventually. So once you've done that, I'm going to hover over this edge, left click, again, it can be a little bit tedious, enter, and then W, left click, enter, and W. So there we go. In a matter of seconds, they are both connected, which is awesome. We can just double check that they're all connected, which is great. Come down to the bottom, make sure that is welded, and then go to the opposite corner. Again, we can press W and W, left click, enter, left click, enter, and we can seam both of these up, which looks good. We can just check the top and make sure that's all connected, which it isn't. We just got one there, and as you can see, this edge kind of moved, so just hover over it and press F. You can see it kind of just evens it out, which is nice, and that is how fast it is. So we can do the same for this one over here. We can zoom into this edge, left click, well, hover over it and press W, left click, enter, left click, enter, and then seam all these edges up, which is nice and fast. And then just check down bottom as well, just make sure these are all welded. And then go to the opposite corner, W and W, left click, enter, left click, enter, W. Just make sure all these are welded. The main points that don't normally get welded is the corners. So if you just double check the corners, as you can see here, just double check there, that's fine. Zoom out down here, and there we go, one there. And then just hover over and press F, hold F down, and it'll just flatten it out. Excuse me. So what you can do now, you can even attach these edges here. So again, just attach these. You know, W, left click, enter, W, left click, enter, W, left click, enter. Now they're all connected, you can go over here to pack, and you can make sure it's a 1K resolution, which was what we're working in. Make sure that align shell to axes is on. The reason you want to make that or make sure it's checked on is because it will keep all the correct orientations of these UVs. So that's definitely something you want to do. Now looking at this, actually we're getting a bit of a problem here, and I don't know why. I think it may be because it was just a glitch. So that's kind of cool. So anyways, what we're going to do is we're going to hit pack all, and it's going to pack all this into a UV space for us. So we can turn off the quick weld now because we don't actually need it. If this is a little bit unmessy, you can grab these individual ones and place them inside if you want. But you can really do whatever with these. You could just bring them all down here, just a quick adjustment. like so, something like that. And that is pretty much it. So what we can do now is we can go to save, and I'm going to save over this object, dismiss that, go to render, turn on AA lines, so that's anti-aliasing lines, switch the map to a 1K, which will put it to 1024. That is a 1K map. It's not just 1000. And then name this to whatever it is. So it's called blade holder. And I'm going to hit save. And that's going to save out a UV map of this object. So when it comes to painting details, it's going to be extremely easy. You don't have to save it. Mine's actually saved to the desktop. You can basically show where you want it to save by going to File, Save As, and then finding your directory. Mine's on the desktop, so that's fine. So I'm going to dismiss that, close that down, and then we can exit out of this. And then what we've got here is we've got here the blade holder, which I'm going to put up here, and then this one I'm put up here. So these are all the ones I've done. I did these last night, as well as doing other things, because UVing is tedious and it is boring, but it has to be done. So with all these objects, you know, it's just very easier to do it this way, especially when you've got multiple objects. Now, if I did want to save a lot more time, a lot of these objects are duplicates, such as the blade holder. I've got 2 of these that I could just, you know, mirror them. But again, Cinema 4D doesn't have the ability to mirror things, because then I've got to convert it to current state to object, then connect and delete, and then delete the opposite side. So it's a lot of work. So it'll take me just as long to UV it inside of UV layout than it would be to just mirror it across. So I could even just copy the UVs from inside of Cinema 4D. I'm losing my throat, I think. But anyways, that's pretty much what you would do. And just to show that this is working, what I'll do is I'll load up the axe that I have created in a high poly mesh. As you can see, this is what we've got here. And then what I can do is basically go to File, New, and then go to File, Merge. And what I can do is go to Desktop, and I can merge all of these objects. Now, not all of them have been... I can't select multiple, which is kind of a bummer. But let's do axe tip. We'll go File, Merge, Blade, and I will go to File, Merge, and I will use Blade 1. I'm not going to do too many of these. And then I want to merge, handle, and then I will File, Merge one last one called Blade Holder, which is the one we just did. And then what I can do with this is stick on a new material for all of these, and then stick on a UV in the color channel here, and you can see all these are mapped perfectly. They're all fantastic. They're all even. That's the most important part. And of course down here we have things that are basically mapped. This one I had a bit of trouble with. As you can see, the textures are actually very slanted. The way I would fix this realistically would be to make a cut in it. At the minute it's kind of projecting from a downward view, which isn't the best, but because this isn't going to have much detail on it, I thought I would just get away with it. I may redo it, but you know, looking at the other ones, you can see that these all look really fantastic. Even though they're upside down here, it's not going to make much of a difference. But getting them all in the right direction is ideal, but not a necessity really. But I mean, as you can see, it looks fantastic, and it just takes me a lot less time. So one of the things that you will have to do if you are basically making hard surface models is, I'll use the blade holder here. One of the things that you will encounter is the stretching of your textures, and the reason this does this is because of the subdivision UVs. You want to put it to edge, which is going to keep the edges perfect for you. You can use boundary, but you will get a little bit of weird stretching, like here. You can see how the pixels are kind of stretched to one side, which isn't particularly good. But with edge, everything is pretty much perfect, and it's the best method to use, really. If you look at boundary and if you look at the standard, you can see it's not particularly good, but with edge it looks pretty good, and of course you can up the subdivisions if you want as well. But overall, that is the best way to do it, and hopefully this tutorial was helpful to you guys. If you've got any questions, leave them in the comment section below, and I will catch you guys in the next tutorial. Peace.